All right, welcome everybody. As folks continue to trickle in, I'm going to do a brief introduction. My name is Elsa Marie Mullins, and I'm a project director at the Environmental Finance Center at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. We're hosted in the School of Government. We work with utilities across the state of North Carolina as well as the nation. And we're here today with Carla West and Allison Smith from the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, and DHHS are the folks that are going to be administering the LIHWAP, the Low Income Household Water Assistance Program, funded by federal dollars that have come through for COVID relief. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Carla, and she's going to be giving us an update, and then hopefully we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. Feel free to submit your questions in the Q&A box. That way we can answer them specifically and not just in the chat. That would be most helpful. But if you need something, feel free to chat me personally as well, and I'll make sure that you're connected. Take it away, Carla.
Thank you, Elsa Marie, and good afternoon, everyone. We just flipped over to the afternoon hour of the day. I hope that you are all well, and I really appreciate you all joining us to talk about where we are in the state of North Carolina and our low-income household water assistance program. You'll be getting a copy of these slides. On this first slide has contact information for both myself and Allison Smith, who is the Assistant Section Chief for Economic and Family Services with the Division of Social Services. My name is Carla West. I am the Senior Director for Economic Security with the Department of Health and Human Services Division of Social Services. And Allison and I both have the great pleasure of working with our energy programs, which includes the Low Income Household Water Assistance Program. Do technology and make the slides flip. So the Low-Income Household Water Assistance Program was established to ensure that low-income households have access to safe and clean drinking water and wastewater services. It was first set up through the Consolidated Appropriations Act and then further funded through the American Rescue Plan Act. And its intended goal is to provide assistance to low-income households that pay a high proportion of their income that they receive for both their drinking water and wastewater services. The funds are intended to go directly to owners or operators of public water systems or treatment works to either reduce the arrearages of customers or to reduce the rates that are charged. There is a website linked here on this slide that has a lot of great information about the Low-Income Household Water Assistance Program, including a lot of presentations that have been completed, documents that have been sent, and the terms and conditions. So if you haven't checked out that website yet, I encourage you to do so. Anytime there are new updates from the Federal Office of Community Services, you can find that there. So as I mentioned, this was established through the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021. Congress initially appropriated $638 million nationwide, and then another additional $500 million through the American Rescue Plan Act to establish a new emergency water and wastewater assistance program. It is a temporary program because there are no permanent authorizations to continue the program. The only funds that have been allocated or appropriated are these dollars. As I mentioned earlier, it is intended to provide emergency assistance to our low-income households, especially those who have the very lowest incomes in the state that also pay a high proportion of their income for drinking water. So what are the roles and responsibilities? There are like three parties to this: the grantee, which is this state; subgrantee, which is our local county Department of Social Services; and you all, the water vendors. So our roles are, for the state, we receive the funding from the Federal Office of Community Services and allocate those funds across our sub-grantees, which is our counties. We manage and monitor the program and fiscal aspects of all sub-grantees. And then we are responsible for developing all of the strategies for compliance and performance management. We're required to create the local policies, to create the draft plan that is submitted for approval, and then to gather and report all of the data that is required to be reported to the federal government. We have been working really closely with local county Department of Social Services to help develop that plan. They're considered a sub-grantee. What that means, their roles and responsibilities include managing that application intake, determining the eligibility and benefit determinations for the household. They run outreach strategies to potential households, and they fiscally track each payment that is made on behalf of the household and coordinate with other assistance programs. For our water and wastewater vendors, your roles are to restore the water services timely when you receive the funds, provide grantees, the state, the required data that we need to ensure that the water or wastewater services were restored, to process payments on water accounts accurately and timely, and then help both the state and the counties reconcile customer accounts to make sure that we have met the needs of our lowest income here in the state. So before we go further, I want to talk a little bit about some of the definitions that are in the water assistance program. First of all, talking about arrearages. For the purpose of the water assistance program, the term arrearage refers to an unpaid past due bill for household drinking water and our wastewater utility services. So water assistance grant resources can be used to pay for arrearages that were incurred at any point in time by households that meet our eligibility requirements, and can include things like reconnection fees, charges, any other kind of fees, and penalties. Rate reduction for the purposes of the water assistance program refers to either a full or a partial payment made towards a current bill that's due and charged to a household for drinking water or wastewater services, and it can include standard charges and fees that are normally included in a household water bill. The household drinking water burden definition looks at the proportion of the total household income that's spent on drinking water utility bills during a specific time frame set by the state in our written policies. And then that burden can be calculated based on gross income or net income, depending on the policies, procedures, and requirements of the state. It can also be calculated based on the amount that was billed to the household for the services. Similarly, the household wastewater burden looks at the proportion of total household income that was spent on wastewater bills during a specific time frame, also set by the state in their written policies that have been approved through our model plan by the Federal Office of Community Services. The other major definitions that we have to make sure that everybody understands is talking about our priority groups. The way that the water assistance program is designed is to ensure that we have alleviated the need for based on priority levels of customers. Priority group 1 are households who have had their water or their wastewater services shut off because of a lack of not paying their bills. Priority group 2 are in households who are in danger of having their water or wastewater services shut off. And then priority group 3 are households who meet the income guidelines that are set up in our model plan, but they need assistance in paying their water or wastewater bills. The potential is that they're not in danger of having it shut off, but they just need additional assistance in paying their bills. Under the plan, we are required to ensure that we have served priority groups 1 and priority groups 2 before we get to paying any bills for priority group 3. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, and I'm sure you have a lot of questions. So the intent of the water assistance program was to model it after a program that is already in existence. The Low Income House Energy Assistance Program, or LIHWAP, was designed to help keep families safe and healthy through initiatives that assist families with their energy costs. So there are federally funded assistance that help low-income households help pay their energy bills or rise to an energy crisis. There are funds to help with weatherization of homes and also energy-related minor home repairs. So because this was a brand new program that the Federal Office of Community Services had to quickly develop federal policies for, get them out to the states so that states could develop their plans and policies, they modeled it after LIHWAP because there are a lot of similarities between the two. We share the same target population between both programs. Our eligibility requirements are the same between both programs. Both programs require that payments are made on behalf of the households directly to the vendors. And for the most part, the same grantees. In North Carolina, it is true that the North Carolina is the grantee and our local county Department of Social Services are the sub-grantees in our LIHWAP program. There are a few differences though. The main difference is that LIHWAP, it's a permanent program that exists year after year after year. LIHWAP is not a permanent program. LIHWAP is a temporary assistance program that runs through September 2023. It is a fixed amount that will, once it's gone, and LIHWAP is renewed every year. LIHWAP is also not a block grant, but LIHWAP is a block grant, LIHWAP is not. So where are we in North Carolina? So with the assistance of our work group made up of state and local county departments of social services, and also with a collaboration with the UNC School of Government and several water and wastewater vendors across the state, we worked on our model plan that was submitted last month. This week, we received guidance back from the Federal Office of Community Services requesting for some clarification and some changes to be made. We are in the process of making those updates now to resubmit by the close of business tomorrow, September 10th. It's been several weeks since we first submitted. We don't know how long it will take after we resubmit it to get our approval back. But we do not anticipate the water assistance program to be able to get started rolling until late November of 2021. As I mentioned earlier, we are required to serve priority groups 1 and 2 first. And then if there's any money left, we can serve priority group 3. And the payments will be made directly to the vendors. To be eligible, households must have income at or below 150% of the federal poverty guidelines. They must be eligible to receive benefits through the LIHWAP program or a means-tested veterans program, supplemental security income, supplemental nutrition assistance program, which can also be for senior nutrition assistance program, our food and nutrition services benefits, and our temporary assistance for needy families. That's referred to as categorical eligible. If they are eligible for any of these programs, they are categorically eligible for the water assistance program. We use the following variables to help us determine the benefit level that households will receive. We look at their household income, how many people are in the household, what their drinking water burden is, and what their wastewater burden is. We have quite a few challenges that we've been working to overcome. And we are so happy to be here today to talk to you all about those challenges and ask your help. So the first challenge that we have is, how do we make sure that every water and wastewater vendor is aware of the program, knows the parameters of the program, the restrictions and the eligibility rules? And then how do we also identify the eligible households and make sure they are aware of the program? We're not sure what the scope is. There's no one single authority that we can determine how many households actually fall into priority groups 1 and 2, and what are the total amounts that are owed in the state. We're going to have approximately $38 million for this water assistance program, but we don't have an idea if that's even enough to cover the households who have been disconnected or who are in danger of being disconnected. So it really makes it hard to make sure that we have enough funds to cover priority groups 1 and 2. So there are a couple of things that we would like to work with you all on. The first thing is a vendor service agreement. A vendor agreement is required in all of our energy programs between the water, in this instance, the water and wastewater vendor, and the local county DSS or the state, to clearly define all of the details of the program and the rules that are for each program, and it sets the expectations for both parties. For example, one of the expectations that the federal office has is that the funds that we send you alleviate the needs and ensures that the participants either have their services resumed or that they are not shut off of their water or wastewater services. It also sets up some really essential elements. What's the purpose of this program? What are the scopes of the services along with a time frame for that? What are the consumer protections that are required by federal law? How are you going to get that payment from us? And then if we have a shared data agreement. So data sharing agreements, we've talked to several of the vendors across the state and have talked about how can we quickly identify families who have either been cut off or are in danger of being cut off that are categorically eligible and automatically get a payment to that vendor. So we've talked to several water and wastewater vendors who said they would be willing to enter into a data sharing agreement with the state of North Carolina to provide us a list of the customers in their just a list of their customers, I guess is into that sentence, who have been shut off or who are in danger of shut off, so that we can run that against our system to identify anyone who is categorically eligible for this benefit and automatically write a check and send it to you. We would let you know who we would be paying the funds for and that you would be receiving a check for. And we would also let you know who we couldn't match against our database so that you could notify those customers of their ability to apply for this benefit to see if they are eligible. We will have the ability for people to apply online for this services, and they can also download an application from our website or come into a local county DSS office to get that application. So I'm about to be on the last slide and turn it over to your questions. But we have created a survey to try and get a scope of what's going on across the state. I'm hoping it's a very simple survey for you to fill out to give us contact information for your business, and also to assess how many, if you are indeed starting your shutoffs, or if you're under a moratorium. If you're under a moratorium, when do you anticipate lifting that moratorium? If you've started disconnections, how many households have been disconnected, and what's the amount needed to alleviate that need? If you have, whether you have started disconnections or not, how many households are in danger right now of having their water or wastewater services disconnected over the next several months, and what amount of money is needed to alleviate that need? We also ask what other services may be included in your bill. For example, we know that many water and wastewater vendors also have trash on their bill. If it cannot be separated out, that is an allowable fee that can be paid. We just need to know that, so when we're identifying our total amount owed, what does that really look like? And there's a couple of other information that we are asking for you to complete. So you're going to get this as part of this, plus Elsa Marie is going to be sending that out to all of you, the link for you to complete in the notes. And Elsa Marie, I just remembered I need to have one more question in there. So before we share that link, I'm going to add that in real quick. It'll just take me a second when we get finished here. Be on the lookout for our vendor service agreement and our data sharing agreement. We'll be sending that out as many ways as we can think of to reach to all of you. We're going to ask our friends at the UNC School of Government to send those out through the listserv. Also, our local county DSS offices are going to be reaching out to you as well to talk to you about the program and to also share those documents with you. They are in the final legal approvals right now, so we should have those ready to go next week for you to start filling those out. And then we encourage you, if you have questions, or maybe you just want to go ahead and establish that connection, to go ahead and reach out to your local county DSS director. This is going to be a fast and furious program, honestly. And so we don't know if it's going to be authorized beyond this initial dollars that we're getting. And so the better we can communicate and the more often we can communicate, I think the better it will be. So those are my slides, but I imagine there are a lot of questions. So I'm going to turn it back over to Elsa Marie and see what questions are out there.
Yeah, I think one that a couple folks have asked, and then I'll also let Shannon Myers and Jim Dotson have both raised their hands, so I'll unmute them after I ask this one. But could you say a little bit more about what else can be included on a bill? So you mentioned solid waste. What about stormwater or recycling? And what do you mean by can't be separated out? Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I'm gonna call on Allison. Allison, would you like to go more in depth on that, or would you like for me to do that?
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'll be happy to do that, Carla. When it comes to the additional amounts that are included on the bill for trash, wastewater, stormwater, in some cases recycling, we know that there is a lot of things included. We did receive guidance that asked us to look if it could be separated out. However, they also understand that due to water companies' systems, that may not be possible. So we would be able to take care of those costs if there was no way to separate that out in the bill. If there was a way to separate it out in the bill, part of the agreement would be that the water and wastewater would be reconnected even though the other portions of the bill, such as recycling and trash, have not been paid. So there are some caveats there, but we can pay the other amounts that are included in your bill if it cannot be separated out.
Thank you. And if anybody needs more clarification, feel free to put it in the chat. For now, I'll allow Jim Johnson to talk and ask his question. Go ahead, Jim. All right.
I'm sorry, she answered my question about the waste being separated from the trash.
All right, sounds good. And I'll unmute Shannon because she had a different question as well.
Am I unmuted now?
Yep.
Great. Let me follow up on the separated out. Is that different from the itemized? So we have an itemized bill, but we can't separate it out in terms of providing, it would be a burden, I guess, to provide DSS or whomever the agency is the amount due to avoid cutoff, because it would include the stormwater. So I'm just want to make sure that that is going to be included.
Right, and that is correct, Shannon. That's a great question. The last thing that we want, and we did receive clarification on this, is any burden on the companies or on the clients that we're trying to serve. So if it is a situation where it just can't be done and the entire amount would have to be paid to avoid that disconnection or to reconnect services, then that is the amount that you would give us.
Great. I have two more questions. Can I go ahead and ask them? Or okay, great. So I wanted to hear more about the priority groups. So 1 and 2 are going to kind of be rolling, I would think, and in terms of the funding methods, especially funding method 1, which sounds like it's going to be pretty automatic. We're going to send you a list of our customers that have been cut off or are in jeopardy. You're going to match them with what you have for the LIHWAP recipients and then pay the balance. So will we need to be sending you a list on a daily basis, our cutoff list? Will we need to do that repeatedly just at the beginning of the program? And because those are kind of ongoing groups, will you ever get to group 3? How will you determine that?
Such a great question, Shannon. So as I mentioned, we have $39 million. Right now, we don't know what the total amount is owed across the state. We had one estimate of about $41 million. So we're thinking we're not going to have a whole lot of money to get to priority group 3. Once we know what we're looking at as far as what's owed right now across the water and wastewater vendors, we'll be able to better determine what that looks like. But for Allison, correct me if I'm wrong, but in my mind, I was thinking that it probably would be a one-time data match with with the state and the water vendors to whomever has been cut off and whomever is in danger of being shut off, right, that of right now. Let's take care of those, and then everybody else would be an application process. So I don't know that we're going to have enough money to do a rolling list. That being said, until we get there and see how much dollars it takes, that answer might change. But Allison, your thoughts?
I agree, Carla. I believe the one-time match is going to give us what we need as far as a very good estimate of how much it's going to take to assist the customers. So once we get that and we match it to our list, if for some reason you have additional people end up on that list, obviously my suggestion would be to refer them to apply for the program. That first run that you give us is what we're going to go off of. And we know that at some point throughout, the next several months, more people will be added to your cutoff list, but they certainly will have an opportunity to apply, even though they're not included on that first round.
Yeah, thanks, Allison. And I do have a question for our water and wastewater vendors. We were wondering what type of information you do capture for your customers that can be used to match those. For example, we don't know if you get social security numbers or dates of birth, or if our best match is going to be names and addresses. Would love some feedback on that.
That was my next question. If there's going to be any kind of template for providing customer information. We do have social security numbers for people that signed up, back in the 70s maybe, but currently that's not information that we collect, and we don't have that obviously for everybody. So in terms of the funding that we're already receiving, CARES funding, HOPE funding, etc., the RUAP, we've been using names and addresses. That's just for Greensboro. I don't want to speak for anybody else. And I think I do have a couple more questions, but I don't want to hog all the time, so I'll reserve those for later.
Thanks, Shannon. I think, yeah, that question of what will be provided, feel free if other folks have, what you typically collect from customers in terms of information, feel free to throw that information in the chat for Carla and Allison. I'm just going to go through kind of in the order that they were submitted, but one question was, will telephonic signatures be accepted in this program as they are in CIP and LIHWAP?
Yes.
That was easy. And so another question was, would a municipality refer their customers to the county DSS department in order to apply for these funds?
Yes, and they'll also be able to apply online when the program becomes available. Our ePass application process, they'll be able to go right on online and apply for it. So they don't have to go to the local county DSS office unless they just want to. And with our rising COVID numbers, we're trying to encourage people to do the online process as much as they can. We know not everybody has that ability, but.
All right, I think that answers that. Another one is this program available only to units of government, or is it also available to those getting water from authorities or investor-owned utilities or water resellers?
So we have to pay it to a water vendor, water or wastewater vendor. And so I don't think there's any restriction on if it's a government water or wastewater vendor or a private owned vendor or anything like that. We just have to pay it to a vendor for water and wastewater needs. The last one that you put in that list though, Elsa Marie, can you repeat what the last
water resellers. So an example might be an apartment building or someone who buys water in bulk and then resells it to their customers.
I do not believe water resellers would be an allowable vendor for this, but Allison, do you recall if that was mentioned in our?
I don't recall that specific conversation, but the way it sounds, they would not be included based off the guidance we received from ACF.
Okay, thank you. Another question that's come up is, will LIHWAP assist households who have already qualified for the HOPE program? There's a utility that has several tenants that have received HOPE payments, but they still have an outstanding balance that could be paid if that needs to be paid.
Yes, if they have been cut off or they are in danger of being cut off, they would, it doesn't matter if they've received funds from other sources, they would still qualify for this to pay off their debt.
All right, thank you. Another question is, how will the state identify eligible families that are either in public housing or their water and sewer bill is part of their rent? Or will those families even be eligible?
It's a great question. It's one of the things that we got feedback on our model plan. Allison, I don't know if you want to answer that or if our answer is we're developing that right now.
We are working on developing that. That was a very specific guidance that we had talked about with ACF to add to our plan. So once we get that completed and make sure it's exactly the way we want it, we can get that information out to you all.
Wonderful, thank you. Another question is that North Carolina is considering, I think this is from the model plan this person read, that you're considering a maximum per customer benefit of $600. Is that correct?
That would be for priority group 3. Priority groups 1 and 2, the amount that would be paid would be the amount needed to alleviate the need. So if they have been cut off, what amount is needed to get their water turned back on? Or if they are in danger of being cut off, what amount is needed to prevent them from being cut off? So there are no limits to that. The 600 refers specifically to priority group 3.
Yeah, there are a couple other questions about limits, but it sounds like priority group 1 and 2, there's no limit, but priority group 3 would be the 600.
I will just say this, because you're all water and wastewater vendors. In order to serve them as many people as we can, you know, we have it sounds like a lot of money, but it's not a whole lot of money. And so, you know, we really are hoping to pay what is needed to prevent them from being cut off or to get their services turned back on. So if they owe, you know, $100,000, but it takes $10,000 to pay them back, you know, to get them turned back on, we would hope that the $10,000 would be good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Let's hope nobody owes that much.
There was a comment in here about customers who have really high bills due to leaks that they can't repair also. So obviously there are a lot of different reasons that a bill could be high. There are 2 questions along the same line, but I'll read one of them. Someone asks if they receive a pledge for a customer. So if their local Department of Services calls them and says, hey, we're going to pay for this person, this is our pledge, we're going to pay off this person's bill. Would vendors need to make sure they don't cut off that person and wait until they receive the check, or how would that work?
That is absolutely what we are hoping. If the vendor signs the vendor service agreement and we make them aware that this customer, we're going to be paying this, that would prevent them from shutting them off until we can get the payment to them. But I saw Allison unmute. So Allison.
Yes, I was just going to say, this is going to run very, very similar as to our other energy programs. So when the DSS employee calls and pledges the amount on the account, that is just as good as you having the money in your hand, because once they go through the process of the application and they approve it, that will be sent to whoever handles their financial piece of cutting those checks, and that will be sent out directly to the vendor. So we do ask, and it is part of the vendor agreement, that once that pledge is made, that you are verifying that you will not disconnect those services, or you will reconnect those services based on that pledge, awaiting the funds to arrive.
Thank you. And I think one clarification from another one is that someone asks if a customer calls and says that the customer applied, how do they confirm that? I'm assuming they would talk to their local county DSS department and say, has this person applied? Is this in process? Is that the vision?
Allison is very experienced in this.
Yes, that would be the process they would need to take. Certainly, we don't want any of our vendors to just assume that someone has been approved for this without receiving that notification. So if they say they went into the local DSS to apply, but they don't have any type of notice showing that, or you've not received a phone call requesting the amount necessary, it's always a good idea to contact the DSS agency and inquire about that.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, just remember that there are really strict income requirements on this. So when somebody applies, we have to check their eligibility before they're actually approved.
Thank you. That's a good reminder. For categorically qualified customers for whom their bill is directly paid to the water vendor, how will they be notified that their bill was paid?
Great question. So we're going to be sending out a notice to all of our recipients that are would be categorically eligible, letting them know that this is going to program is going to happen. And then when we pay the bill, they will get a letter from us letting them know that a payment has been sent to their vendor to alleviate their bill.
Thank you. And I don't think this was a question on there, but I would say also, what about the folks who aren't categorically eligible but apply and are eligible?
So if they've applied and did you say, and they are eligible?
Yeah.
Yeah. They get notification of that, correct, Allison, that they've been approved?
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah.
Thank you. Another question is, so it sounds like a utility customer can apply for LIHWAP assistance directly, i.e. the online process, but would their utility need to provide supplemental information to confirm that they're in priority group 1 or 2?
So if they apply directly, I believe they have to also present a copy of the bill showing that they've been cut off or are in danger of being cut off. Is that right, Allison?
Yes, that's correct. They would provide something to the county that they are applying in, and the county would actually in turn contact the vendor to request the exact amount needed to avoid disconnection or to have the services restored.
Okay, so the county department will then contact the utility.
That's correct.
I think we got a couple of these. If a household is assisted in the first round, can they reapply at a later date, assuming that not all the money is used up right away? Can a household be helped more than once?
They can, assuming there is money left, if they then fall into priority group 3.
All right. Let me see here. How this may not be something you can answer, but I'll ask anyway. If someone is cut off and has not applied yet, how long after the application is submitted until utility might get approval to put them back on?
Allison? I don't know the answer.
Sorry, I was trying to find my mute button. So once they apply, obviously it's the desire of the local county DSS agencies to process these applications as quickly as possible. I do not foresee there being a large amount of wait for them to make contact with the companies itself. So if there's a concern that once they apply, it's going to be several weeks or several months before they make contact, I do not foresee that in any way, shape, or form. Our local DSS agencies are very skilled in doing this. They do it with their energy programs all the time. So they're so good at what they do, and they are very aware of the processes, and they know the importance of assisting the citizens to get their services back on. And they know just how important it is that we assist our water vendors as well. We know this has been a very hard time for everyone the last 18 months. So there should not be a very long delay in taking care of this, because we are trying to meet a crisis need. So I don't believe you'll have any issues with that.
Thank you. This is another very relevant question I've heard. If a customer who would be qualified for this program has recently moved out of town, but still owe money to the water and wastewater utility, could that utility still apply for the funds using the customer information?
Do you want me to take that, Carla? Okay. So we have had conversations about this because we know that many times the citizens we serve are transient and they do move quite often. If a situation arises where they have moved and the only way that they can get their services connected at the new address is to pay the old bill, then absolutely we would be able to do that. As far as the company itself applying on behalf of the client with their information to get the bill paid, we will not be able to do that.
Okay, so there has to be some information from the customer saying they need to get these bills paid in order, and any verification of income or other information. There has to be something from the customer as well as verification from the utility in order for that bill to be paid.
Right, that's correct.
Thank you. That is really helpful. Let's see. How much funding is being dispersed to North Carolina, and how much will go to each county?
It's a great question, and the reason why we're asking for your help on how much each water and wastewater vendor has, it's really been a challenge to identify that. What we have learned through our friends at UNC School of Government is that the average cost of water and wastewater is vastly different across the state, and not knowing exactly how many households are impacted or the amount that's owed in each of the counties has been a challenge for allocations. And so that's one of the reasons why we're asking this information in the survey, which, by the way, Elsemarie is ready to go. Also, we're going to have our local county DSS offices reach out to the water and wastewater vendors in their counties to ask the same information, so that we can ensure that we've allocated the funds across the state to alleviate the needs, knowing that it's going to be vastly different county to county. We're going to, because we have to simultaneously do this auto payment for water and wastewater vendors who are willing to share their data with us and have an application, we're going to have to make sure that we have enough money to cover all of those. So it's going to be based on what we know is owed in each county, to the best of our knowledge.
Okay, thank you. Do the funds apply to a customer that is named on the account only as the main account holder? Does the main account holder need to apply? Or will it be up to the applicant to provide that information upon request? I think, let me see. So I think maybe, let me ask it this way. If the name of somebody applying for LIHWAP does not match the name on the account, how is that going to be reconciled?
Allison, I'll let you answer that because it'll be similar to what we do in our other energy programs, right?
Right. Obviously, anyone could come in and apply for someone if they needed a representative to do that. We will have to verify who is the account holder. We have to verify that they know that someone's applying for them. So it would just be a verification process with the Department of Social Services where they go in and apply. We do know that there are times that the water bill is not in the name of someone else. And I'll be perfectly honest with you, I will have to go back and look at our plan to see if that was part of it, just like it is with LIHWAP. And we can get that information back to you.
Thank you. Another question, they keep coming, there are a lot of good ones. If a client is approved and the pledge has been made and they're currently disconnected, will they also be charged a reconnect fee? So from the utilities perspective, if they're going to reconnect someone and they get a call from their county department saying, go ahead and reconnect them, do they then add that reconnection fee onto the bill?
Yes, the reconnection fee obviously would be added, and that's another piece of information that we're going to try to collect from you guys is what are your reconnect fees? How much do they run? Is that something that you charge on everyone? So, you know, if you could let us know that when they go over the survey with you, but yes, we could pay associated fees in order to restore that service.
Thank you. Another one, can a bill be paid if it's in a deceased person's name or a minor child?
That is the piece that I need to look back in our plan and verify. I don't want to give you anything that is not correct. We have a lot of plans in the making right now for different programs, so I don't want to mix that up, but we will get that back to you very shortly.
All right, thank you. Another question is, when do you anticipate the kind of one-time data match to occur?
It's a really great question. We are hoping to be able to do that probably in the 1st of November, right around there. Allison, would you agree with that?
Yes, I would.
Thank you. Another question, would the customer be required to also pay part of the bill?
No.
That was easy. Another question, can a payment help a customer who is trying to set up service to pay their deposit?
If we had funds left for priority group 3, and I would imagine that they could apply for that in priority group 3 if they met the income levels. But that's really assuming we have money left to get to that priority group 3.
Thank you. A question, another timeline question. When might we see the vendor agreement? I'm also going to add data sharing agreement on there. Is there a timeline? I think did you already mention next week, or when might?
It's with our legal team right now. We're hoping to have those out next week. We'll send them out to everybody in the listserv with the help of Elsa Marie, and then also through our DSS directors. Every way we can think of to make sure that we get them to you. And part of the thing that we'll be capturing in this survey is an email address for your contact. So once we get that, we can also email it directly that way as well.
Thank you. Another one, in addition to the fees that we already mentioned, Reconnect, late fees, etc., will lock fees or pool meter fees also be included in the fees that can be paid in order to get someone reconnected?
Any fees that are attached to the bill to establish reconnection of service could be paid, yes.
Thank you. Another question would be, is there a way to provide a flyer or something we can give to water and wastewater customers to point them to the assistance once it's rolled out?
Yes, that is something that we absolutely are working on, to get a flyer with information about applying for the services for all of our water and wastewater vendors and our local county DSS offices, to be able to provide to customers to explain the program and how they can apply for those services, eligibility requirements and things like that. So we hope to have that completed well in advance of the November launch and get it to you all as early as possible.
Thank you. Another question, are there any provisions being made for clients who are on well and septic?
Unfortunately, they are not part of this federal plan. The payments must go specifically to a vendor. And so customers who have water, well water or septic tanks would not be eligible for payments through this program.
Another question is if, and I'm not sure, yeah, well, I'll just ask it. If the utility sends a list to their county department of customers that are past due, sooner rather than later, so like next week, but that money's not available until November, are they supposed to keep everybody turned on? And what if they continue to not pay and that amount gets higher? My guess is you'd be asking for the data very soon before the money would be distributed.
Yeah,
Is that
we
correct?
would want to get the most accurate data to ensure that we're getting the right money to the counties. The questions that we have now are just helping us determine the need, but we probably would ask for that data. Like if we're going to make these payments towards the end of November, we'd probably ask like right after the 1st of November, go ahead and send us your data to do those matches. But that should not prohibit you from going ahead and talking to your local county DSS director. And if you want to go ahead and share data, I know that several have already done that, just to get a sense of the need and work out between that DSS director and that water and wastewater vendor on how they want to handle it specifically. Communication's always great.
Thank you. And we have a couple more minutes, so I have a couple more questions lined up, but I also just want to say now, thank you so much for being willing to answer so many rapid fire. And in addition to the recording and the slides and the survey link, you'll get an email with our emails in it. So if you have further questions for Carla or Allison or myself, you can go ahead and email us. Everyone who registered for this will get that email.
Yeah, and I also want to say if there are questions that we didn't get to, if you'll send me a list of all of these questions and what's in the chat, we'll be happy to write something up for those so that it can be shared.
Thank you. Thank you. Another question is, if the funding is exhausted with direct payments for priority group 1 and 2, would there be no other application process?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. Another one, how are households with the highest water burden defined? Like, will that be part of the eligibility or prioritization?
Yeah, I think, and Allison, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's going to look at what their income is compared to what their household water and wastewater bill are, and compare the two of them to see what percentage of their income is being spent on water and wastewater services.
That's correct.
And so is there like a cutoff? If it's not above a certain percent, they're not eligible, or?
Nothing that specific
Okay.
yet.
Okay, thanks. I think you've answered most of the rest of them. One of the questions is, will there be another presentation for local DSS agencies? I think there's some folks on the call that aren't with utilities, but with the county.
There are, and yes, we plan on scheduling one next week. We just needed to finish for my DSS family who's on this call. We just need to have time to finish our updates to our model plan, and so we will be scheduling one next week specifically for you.
Thank you. And then I think the last piece of kind of question that hasn't really been addressed to get to, I think just noting that trying to make sure that they know whether or not third-party vendors can be included. So these are like water resellers, and whether or not they qualify for payments or not. So just making sure that can be clearly specified on the application and on the website to make sure you know if those folks are excluded or included.
Okay, thank you.
And I think that's it for now. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Carla and Allison, so much for being willing to take the rapid fire questions. And again, I'll be sending out a follow-up email to all the registrants. And if you have further questions, feel free, you can pop them in the chat for the Q&A right now, or you can email us afterwards in response to the email that'll go out after this. Thank you very much for joining us, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.